guys, welcome to our video series called Coping Through COVID, sponsored by the Rock Counseling Group in Champaign, Illinois. So this is going to be a 4-part video series where myself and John Kleber are going to chat through some ways that we can process through this whole experience of COVID right now. And if you're watching this on YouTube, we're gonna have 4 videos, and I encourage you to watch them in a row. But I also have multiple resources like journal prompts, downloads, summaries, and more references and resources. And those are all at freshrn.com/courses. And you can enroll in this course, and it will have all the videos and it will have all the downloads so that you can have lots of different little pieces of things to pull together if you want to get more out of it. And throughout this series, we're going to be chatting about also when it might be a good time to see a professional counselor, because that's been a huge need throughout this experience with COVID. So ways that you can do that are through your WORKS EAP, Employee Assistance Programs, but also if you would like to set up an appointment with the Rock Counseling Group through their telehealth, we also have a link for that in the description of this video. All right, let's get started. My name is Katie Kleber, and I am a nurse educator.
And I'm John Kleber. I'm a professional counselor. We're
going to just chat through some tips and some strategies to help us all kind of emotionally work through this massive, huge crisis that we're all going through. So we wanted to talk through how we can best walk through that. And the title of our first video is called Damage Control. Mm-hmm. So John's going to talk through us about what damage control and how we can start processing this.
Right. Kate, thanks for having me on here. Number one, I think when I saw some of the responses from nurses about what they're going through, mm-hmm. you just kind of listed all of them out, but some of the stuff that I heard, I mean, it's pretty evident they're going through some really difficult stuff.
Yeah.
Just read through those, I'm not trying to use hyperbole, but it was a little heartbreaking mm-hmm. To read everything that nurses are going through. So hopefully these videos can help a little bit and just give some tips, some things to think about, some perspectives to consider. And thank you all for, braving all this stuff, dealing with these challenges. But yeah, the first video here is called Damage Control. And the reason being because we're at a point where a lot of you guys are suffering. And I think it's important to stop and say, well, let's see how we can stop the bleeding, so to speak. Mm. Let's identify first where we can put some boundaries in place. Put some gauze on it.
Yeah.
Put some bandages on it,
mm-hmm.
so that you guys aren't continuing to, reopen these wounds on a daily basis, where maybe you could be actually stopping that bleeding. So, I want to talk about boundaries in a few different aspects. Number one, with just boundaries at work. Potentially even boundaries with employer.
Mm-hmm.
And then probably what I think is more challenging, which is boundaries with friends, loved ones, and then even just personal boundaries you need for yourself mm-hmm. as it relates to what's going on. So I actually want to start off the first one with a little bit of an analogy. And I apologize for everyone out there who doesn't know this reference, but I'm going to use a sports reference because in the middle of COVID, this big documentary about the Chicago Bulls came out called The Last Dance. And I actually really liked just this topic that was brought up. So I'm a huge Scottie Pippen fan. He was a forward for the Chicago Bulls. And one of the things it talked about was he was one of the faces of the Chicago Bulls. And so he's, put out there as this is our guy. We love Scottie. He does mm-hmm. so much for us. The organization, is praising him. And they valued him. They loved him. But one of the things we heard you guys talk about was it's tough. We feel like our organization's calling us heroes, but we don't always feel like we're being taken care of.
Yeah, I think the word that I saw consistently was disposable.
Disposable.
I feel very I know I'm putting my life on the line a little, especially early on when we didn't know nearly as much as we do today. There's so much unknown, and people felt like I get thrown into the front line and I get called a hero, but I have to pay my bills. I have no choice. I have to do this. And I could very well get COVID. And actually I had people reach out to me who had colleagues that passed away from it. And then, of course, that job's got to be filled tomorrow, right? Or whatever day, if you decide to leave or are furloughed, because there were also nurses who were furloughed because they had such a low census. So, yeah, you just feel like incredibly disposable.
Yeah, that was a little bit about what we heard. And this isn't to bash organizations necessarily. This is a tough time for everybody. But in that documentary, it kind of came out like Scotty talked about, well, I was this guy to the organization. However, he was not being compensated the way that he felt. And he decided, you know what, I need to take care of me. I need to put up some boundaries in terms of how I feel like I need to be treated. Whether people who saw it think he did that the right way or the wrong way. I think that's a good analogy for you as an employee right now. It's important that as you go into work and you're wanting to care for your patients, like shout out to nurses for how much they care and want to be that go-to person, and they really are for that patient. But where can you set some boundaries? And what that starts with is understanding what are the expectations? What's my job description right now in the midst of COVID? What are the things that this is at least the meets expectations part of my job?
Yeah, I think nurses are notorious for trying to exceed expectations, or also we see our team members suffering and we want to be able to help them. Right. So we in turn cross our own boundaries and hop in and maybe stretch ourselves way too thin. Right. And I think it's really important for nurses, for us, especially, nursing is one of those professions that we often view as a calling. But I think that's a recipe for disaster in terms of these boundaries. Because if it's a life calling, then it almost is like you can't delineate the relationship with your patients and your employer, right? Like if it's your employer, that's a business partnership. You're a nurse, you have a nursing license, they need nurses. That's a business partnership, right? You're compensated, you provide care. But that's very different than the relationship with your patients. Right.
So I think it starts with, in the midst of what my organization, what my unit is asking of me, that I just know that's what's expected of me. Where am I maybe being asked to do more?
Yeah.
And listen, everybody gets to decide where their boundaries are. So one theme you're going to hear in all this is stopping and recognizing, how am I feeling? How is this all affecting me? But being able to say, where is it possible that I'm taking on more tasks, more responsibilities, and it's actually it's causing more stress. It's causing unhealthy stress. It's increasing my anxiety. It's increasing my frustration, my irritation, my burnout. You got to be able to know that about yourself and then say, okay, maybe my organization is asking me to do this, or I feel like I have to do this, but do I? Is this something where I can just say, you know what, I don't have time for this right now, or I need to delegate this? And that can be a tough thing, I would imagine, especially, again, on a nursing unit where you're trying to take care of people and you're trying to help. So I would encourage people to start there. What boundaries and shifts, tasks, and responsibilities that are not necessarily what are part of my job description right now? Some people may say, but you know what, though? This is a tough time. I want to help out extra. That's great.
Yeah.
It's all about understanding what boundaries you need. That's why this is damage control. If there's bleeding, we got to stop that bleeding. And sometimes that means just saying no to some things.
And everybody's wound looks different, right? There might be some people who they want to jump to the front line. There might be some other people who are like, you know what, this is too much, and I don't think I can even make this work at my hospital. This is just too much for me. And knowing what that line is for you, I think everybody's boundaries do look different, and that's important to know yourself and that self-awareness.
Sure, and I think with patients, and here's what I'm going to say about this one. My understanding of what patients who have passed away from COVID. We got video chats, we got FaceTime. They're not able to have people come in. So nurses truly are the only physical contact they can have.
Yeah.
So when I say setting boundaries with patients, I'm going to say that with care, because that might be something where it's important to you to be that person to your patient. I still think there's always room to ask. Are there times where I am attempting to totally take on my patient's situation? Are there times where it's like, you know what, I need to spend this much time, but then that extra few minutes right now I actually need to go and take a quick break, or
Mhm.
I need to maintain that kind of boundary in this relationship to make sure I don't get lost in it.
And a good example of exercising that is I heard from many nurses online about how right now, well, actually, with COVID, and you've got multiple members of the healthcare team, and a lot of them have consistently gone to the nurse to go in and do the assessment, to go in and do the care, so that that person doesn't have to possibly expose themselves, but they're making the nurse or asking the nurse to do that, even though there is appropriate protective equipment in the room or near the room, and there's no legit reason for them to just ignore that and have you do it. I think that's a great place to say, hey, actually, I've got the gown and the gloves. It's all right there. Let me know if you need anything. I'm going to go do blah, 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 and empower that person to go in and have that same kind of bravery that you have to go in and take care of that patient all day.
And so some ways that maybe there's some bleeding going on, you need to set boundaries. Like I just said, there's irritation where you actually start to become irritable.
Yeah.
You start to notice, like, I'm going through my day and I'm just having a lot of just negative thoughts consistently, or my anxiety level, my ability to keep myself together with that patient. Obviously, and we'll get to this in a second, you can maybe see if it's bleeding over outside of work. But those are some signs that, I'm starting to struggle. Maybe it's also I'm not getting the things done I need to because I'm getting taken out by all these extra things.
Yeah.
So it's important to be able to notice at work where there's boundaries that just need to be set. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is boundaries with, when you go home and it's loved ones and friends. And we're going to talk later in this video series about how to communicate with people about this. And sure, that's for nurses. That's also probably for everybody. But as you go home, with all that's going on, I mean, this issue has become something that people want to ask questions about. Who better to ask
than the
nurse, right? Oh, you guys know what's going on. Let's have an hour-long conversation after your shift about this.
What? This is ridiculous, right? Come on, people.
But people want
awareness.
People want to know.
They do.
And sometimes we don't. The lay people, so to speak, don't realize.
And don't realize that just because you're a nurse possibly working with an acutely ill COVID patient doesn't mean you have the full picture of all of public health and all the efforts of things and these different things about tests and positivity rates. And it's like, I know how to go to work, take care of my patient there and do whatever. Or if you're not with COVID patients, it's like the public expects you to have this all encompassing amount of knowledge about this very complex thing that's changed a lot. It's a lot of pressure, let's be honest.
Absolutely. So as you go home, being able to recognize, you know what, maybe I don't want to talk about work at all. And I also maybe don't want to even talk about this issue. This issue's obviously in the news a lot right now. And there's a lot of questions about policies, procedures. But as a nurse, as a frontline worker, being able to say, tonight, I don't want to ask or answer any questions about it. I'd prefer not to talk about it. I'd actually just prefer, if I have a family, let's just spend time enjoying each other, doing other things.
What about the talking point? I'm overdosed a little on the COVID-ness. Can we chat about something else?
As far as talking points, just being able to say, hey, you know what? I understand you got a lot of questions, or I know this is a lot, but right now I just need a break from it. And I also encourage you, if you have a family, and I know at this point it seems like maybe we're later in the game, but maybe you just have to have a preemptive conversation of, what, from now on when I come home, just no questions.
No thanks.
Prefer not to talk about it. My days off, here's maybe the times I would, but these other times I don't want to be that go-to person.
And you're allowed to have that space. I think part of it is knowing that it is okay for you to say, no, guys, I don't want to talk about it. Like, just because you have a nursing license doesn't mean you have to be the nurse for everybody. Sure.
And then I think the last thing I would bring up, just trying to keep these kind of short and sweet, personal boundaries. And we're going to get more into this in the kind of the taking control and surrendering control part, but sometimes we need boundaries in what we look at and what we how we spend our time.
Yeah.
It could be that, you want to stay informed of what's going on in the nation and the world, but maybe you need some boundaries from the news and from those notifications and from social media. Understand where you need to set up more boundaries because it's keeping you floundering. It's so important, again, to have that self-awareness and to have those check-ins of, you know what, I just need to take a break from this right now. It's not helping.
Yeah.
And so, I think this is all about where do I need to set up some healthy, not necessarily walls, but just boundaries where I know that, all right, I'm going to keep myself from being inundated with this.
Yeah. Like before, I know I'm going to hang out with my daughter at this time. I'm not going to look at the news right before that because it's going to make me all edgy and grouchy.
That's a great point, yeah.
Or whatever, whatever that might look like. Or not before bed. That's probably a big one, is to not look at the stuff before bed. Turn off the push notifications, that kind of stuff. And I'll put some more like tips and stuff with the videos as well. But does that really round out your boundary?
Yeah, again, not wanting to get too far into it, but just some simple ways to be able to say, here's some boundaries that we need to set up. And again, it all starts with understanding what are healthy boundaries and how am I being affected so that I can set those up.
All right, guys, that concludes this video. So we will see you in the next one. Thanks.